New York State requires that employees must be covered by their employer for workers' compensation insurance. The workers' compensation law in New York State considers most individuals providing services to a for-profit business to be employees of that business. The state defines an employee as a person who performs under the supervision, direction, and control of an employer, whether that be on or off their premises. This definition applies whether the worker is part-time, full-time, temporary, seasonal, casual/day labor, leased, borrowed, or unpaid, including volunteers and family members. Employers must cover them under a workers' compensation policy, which provides benefits to workers who sustain injuries on the job or suffer from work-related sicknesses. Some employers may attempt to skirt this law by only hiring independent contractors and paying via 1099 rather than W-2. A word of caution in doing this: if the independent contractor shows up at a specified time and works for the employer on a consistent basis, possibly using the employer's tools or supplied materials, the New York Workers' Compensation Board, the IRS, or the Department of Labor may consider that contractor to in fact be an employee. It should also be noted that true independent contractors or subcontractors must also be covered by the employer's workers' compensation insurance if they do not carry insurance of their own. Employers should request a valid certificate of workers' compensation insurance from their subcontractor before work is started and each time they rehire thereafter, or risk being non-compliant. The employer's workers' compensation insurance company may be forced to pay a claim on an independent contractor that otherwise has no coverage in place. Therefore, insurance companies, when conducting their annual audit for workers' compensation policies, will often add the exposure of the independent contractor to the employer's policy in absence of a certificate showing that the coverage is in place elsewhere. The penalties for noncompliance can be as high as $2,000 for every 10-day period without coverage. This penalty amasses over the time period in which the non-compliant employer had no workers' compensation coverage and had individuals providing services for their business. And as such, by the time an employer receives their first penalty notice, the penalty may be more than $12,000. In cases involving severely injured employees, the medical costs alone could be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars per injury. And without workers' compensation, the employer may be responsible to cover those bills, pay the penalties and fines, and still be required to pay for a workers' compensation policy in the end. Some folks opt to be non-compliant, claiming that workers' compensation rates are just too expensive. But considering the penalties for being non-compliant, plus the award you may need to pay an employee if injury or sickness occurs, the risk of electing to be non-compliant is often not worth the monetary reward. If you have questions about workers' compensation insurance, or if you are interested in getting a free quote, you can contact us by calling 607-535-6501 or by visiting our website, sidleinsurance.com.